passe. Oh, l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! Vi i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone, welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's our semi-final preview. Chris O'Reilly here with Brian Campion side by side in Cologne at last.
You're so much louder in person. Hello, Chris. I'm joking.
And the consistently second most important person on the podcast, Brian Campion. Call back to a joke which only people on Patreon who listened to the podcast yesterday would have gotten. Alex Kulesh, how you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How you doing, boys?
Good. It's good to be with you, Brian. We've seen each other on Zoom every few days, but finally in the same place after roaming around Germany for the last 3 weeks, and we're in Cologne on the verge of deciding it all. It's France against Sweden, Denmark against Germany in the semi-finals of the men's EHF EURO 2024, and we're going to preview the games in just a little bit, but I think it's worth ranting a little bit on the fact that 3 of the 4 teams at this stage are coming into the semi-finals on the back of a loss. Interesting, huh?
I'm glad it's over, that part of the tournament, because we ramped up so nicely then, and then you have this situation where just before the biggest weekend on European international handball comes around, you have this kind of a few friendlies before you get into it, which, I don't know, it's just, I really hate that. And I'm not sure anyone likes it. Imagine the people who had the tickets today for the German match thinking they might have been buying tickets for a crunch game, the last grass group match, and then they saw that what they saw today with Croatia beating Germany, and the Germans kind of like, oh no, yeah, we meant this, we were rotating.
Yeah, we definitely played our second
rotating.
team. 100% played our second team.
Yeah, started the first team, went down by 3 goals, and they're like, oh no, throw the young lads on now.
I don't know. Yeah.
But can I take you back to the end of the preliminary round and just how excited we were? Just how buzzing we were at that moment. Listen back to that podcast. You know, we're talking over ourselves. We all had different emotions, different perspectives. And here we are just sitting here after essentially 3 wasted days of handball. It just feels so wrong.
It can happen, right? I mean, 2 years ago, we were at the same stage of the competition where literally Sweden needed the last shot of the game to beat Norway, to go ahead of Norway into the semi-finals after they'd scraped through a previous round. Final shot of the game and final shot of the main round to get into the semi-finals, and they won it. It just so happened, like, it looked like, if you asked us 4 or 5 days ago, it looked like both groups could go down that way, but then literally like 2 results changed all of that. One of them, Sweden beating Portugal, and the other one, Germany beating Hungary, and then all of a sudden nothing really matters in the end. And like if we just go back to Group 1, and we're recording after the end of the games there, my big takeaway from that, like, Germany through with the fewest points a team has gone to the semi-finals with since the change of format, with 5 points. But every other team in that group have one game at least to look back on and go, fuck, why did we blow that game, or would we be in the semi-final? Hungary had it against Austria. Austria had it against Germany. Iceland had it against everyone. And Croatia had it against Iceland. If Croatia had beaten Iceland and beaten Germany today, Croatia would have been through. It was so close to being such an epic finale, but it was the complete opposite.
Yeah. I mean, even just had Austria won, it would have been at least tense. I mean, would Germany have beaten Croatia today? Would they actually have beaten Croatia?
I think Croatia were better.
I think they were better.
I think they were just better.
I mean, what a keeper. I mean, he's such a sensation, isn't he?
22 saves, Dominik Kuzmanovic.
That's insane.
Holy moly.
And that was after
that's
Konstantin Mustel had 20 saves. And we were here being like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And then Kuzmanovic shows up and just shows up the German attack, really. Just calls Calls them what?
Yeah.
Calls them a bunch of
Wankers, go on. Do it in a Gunther Stein accent, it'll be fine.
calls them a bunch of wankers.
Yeah, the Germany game was bizarre. France came with the only team with a win, and they tried their best to give Hungary the chances to win. Huge amount of turnovers, not much in the goalkeeper department. Gave away all these penalties. Still, Hungary couldn't get the job done. But I think you want to tear into Sweden a little bit here, Alex. Who I don't know. Am I more disappointed in Sweden or Denmark? I think Denmark.
But yeah, you have to give it to France for having some sporting integrity.
Yeah,
I'm. You know, we talked
the
about
complete
it.
opposite yesterday.
Yeah, we're like, oh, who's gonna? They're gonna play a couple of people. Obviously, Karabatic got the rest. That completely makes sense.
Bella Sen as well, which surprised.
But yeah, they came out with a first team. Dickamem was playing. Prandy playing. Remily had finally had a top game shooting. He was 7 from 7. Really ran the show. Fabregas played. You know, they didn't need to play any of those players in that final game against Hungary. They could have gone for the Denmark approach and rested their whole first team. They didn't because I think they wanted momentum. I think they saw what happened to Denmark and were like, you know, we don't really want to have a loss on a record here.
No.
And it's not, you know, we're still playing Hungary. I think we can take them, essentially.
Yeah.
And they just, because it mattered, you know, it could have, if they had played a fully second team, Hungary would have qualified.
Yeah.
Like, we could have been in a situation where, you know, Germany lose to Croatia, maybe a tighter game because it would have mattered. Hungary beat France because they played some randomers, and everyone is raging. Everyone is absolutely fuming at France. They wanted to avoid that controversy. They wanted to keep momentum. But you know what? They look good.
They do. And I did mention yesterday in the Patreon only podcast that I felt, and this I believe even stronger after seeing it, that the full French squad is in a better place than the Danish full squad when you take away the best players, because they did play the second team, except for Dickamem, who I got on good authority from a former teammate of his, Victor Thomas. You know, he's had the foot injury all season, and the main reason why he has that injury is because he's not playing regularly in Spain. And so he wants to play constantly every 2 days. He wants to keep going because playing is what is keeping him fit. Surprise, surprise. But so that was maybe a reason why he played a bit more than everyone else. But besides that, they threw out the full squad. And it looked like the same French team. They changed players. Maybe some of the cutting edge wasn't exactly there, but they're doing everything. They looked super comfortable, which wasn't the same for Denmark. Not that it's going to make a difference if Pytlik, Gietzel and Saugstrup are all fit and playing in the final. That's another story.
But I mean, at least the Denmark game was a bit of a game as well. But the Sweden and Germany one, like, it wasn't any contest in the end. And I feel like that was a bit more depressing, because I feel like there's no way. Like, I felt like Sweden and Germany in my head were the same thing. It was like, oh no, yeah, we didn't really care, you know, after the fact. It really did feel like that, because it was such a hammering by Norway as well.
Yeah.
And some of the beach handball style goals that they were scoring at one stage was like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck's going on here? I mean, this is the latter end of a European Championship, and these kind of getting steamrolled by a team that were getting steamrolled by everyone else. It was bizarre, you know, and that's why you can't be a fan of. Yeah, I
think it shows how important the psychological side of like getting through is, and like getting up for every single game. And I think they were already looking forward to Friday, because of course they were. They're the only team who knew who their opponents were. They knew they were playing France 5 days in advance. I would not be led to believe that they were preparing for Norway on Monday. They were taking a rest on Monday. I know that for sure. And then they started preparing for France, because that is all that matters. And at the end on Friday, if Germany and Sweden pull off 2 miraculous victories, then it'll all be worth it, won't it?
Yeah.
But only one of those miraculous victories may happen.
Yeah, and it is interesting. There's different approaches. You mentioned Denmark and France squads. Denmark have an unbelievable squad, but their second team players, their second string players don't really play.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't seen any of Mads Benson Larsen. Johan Hansen hasn't been there. Damgaard's got a few minutes. They really lean on, Giesel's played every minute.
It should come as no surprise that once they finally get a game, that
They're like that.
first of all, they're like, oh, this is the game we get in. That surely it doesn't mean much, and like their self-worth, and no matter how like confident they are and in such a machine they are, it's got to have an effect on them, right?
Yeah, but then going into a semi-final, you come on in a semi-final and you've played like that. I don't know, not great. Like,
Exactly. Like, for France, they've kept it really fluid for the whole tournament. They've given each player, it's really the Barcelona approach in the club handball, where that season they were literally just letting everyone play all the time, keeping it fresh. And it worked for them. It looks like it's working for France. For Denmark, I think there's this feeling that they got rocked against Sweden a little bit. You know, the way they just steamroll teams and they take that third quarter and they run away and then that's it. But then against Sweden, they started to run away in that third quarter. And then Sweden said, nah, we got this. Brought them back, and I think they were rocked. Because when the number one options don't work, it hasn't always worked to bring in like the second stringers. And that's not on the quality of the players, I don't think. And in that poll that actually got 1,500 votes, 55% of people thought that Denmark would not qualify for a semi-final without their best.
It got tighter
players.
though.
It did get tighter, and it is, that means that 45% of people, 750 people who voted, thought that even without their 7 best players, Denmark would make it to a semi-final, which is a ridiculous thought.
Would France's second team make it to a semi-final going on what we've seen so far?
I don't think so.
No.
I think it's the different approaches where France have roles of, each player, their top players have 40 minutes and their second string players have 20 minutes in each game. And they have a role in the full game. For Denmark, the backup players are all impact players. It's like, go out there and show yourself for 3 minutes. If it works or doesn't, we go back to the first squad. Yeah. So maybe the coaches would do things differently, but I don't think there's any team that can get to a semi-final without their 7 best players, not even Denmark or France.
I think it's worth noting as well, like, generally, once they get to this stage, at least at World Championship level, they go all the way now. So it's not like we don't have any material to base it on. Semi-finals are semi-finals now. It's between 3 of 4 teams that we're used to seeing at this level. So Denmark know how to navigate this part of the competition as well, and and Spain aren't there, which is usually their bogey team at this point.
I mean, you were saying, Alex, earlier about like how we were so pumped about the tournament in that earlier podcast, and then how we seem so down now. But I am very confident that this last weekend is going to be really, really good. So I think we're going to look back at this still in a few weeks or even a few years, I think, as probably one of the best European Championships. Even though we had a bit of a dull end to the main round, I still think there's been some really, really amazing stories. I mean, just maybe Austria from the main round is probably the biggest story. And then you have the likes of all the debutants in the preliminary round. So I think there's been some great stories, and I think we're heading into a really, really great final weekend. So I'm feeling confident still that it's going to come good.
Friday is going to be huge.
Yeah,
that's good, and the semi-final days are the best.
Yeah,
you know that now, right?
Yeah, and we have 4 really good teams, and probably the 4 best teams. I would even say that Germany do deserve to be there despite their up and down form.
Do you think Germany would have finished in the top 4 of the other group?
In the top 4 of the other group?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ahead of Slovenia and Portugal?
Yes, I think they finished ahead of Slovenia and Portugal.
So I don't know. They were very lucky. They shaved past Iceland. Probably shouldn't have gotten the win there.
They were a dodgy call away from last in the group.
Should have got beat by Austria. I mean, Austria should have really won by 3 in the end.
But that is quite fun. It was a like a complete mess of a group, but it was fun. And even today, seeing Austria like go down by 6 all of a sudden and then come back from 6 down and make a game of it and like just be there scrapping away for a potential semi-final spot is ludicrous.
It's crazy. And they were out on their feet, Austria, today. Like, I mean, the first half, as you had tweeted out, Alex, they wanted to go to bed. And they really did. And you have to give them props for coming out in the second half and making a game of it and really having to dig deep, because I've been watching them each and every day in the main round here, and they just visibly look quite a lot slower today. Everything looked a lot more laboured, and it's very, very similar with Hungary as well. Like, even you could see them in the warm up. Like, these lads are wrecked, and there was 3 or 4 of the Hungarian players at the end that they were just completely could barely stand up at the end of it. So they were just completely out on their feet. I think that's maybe a difference also between those teams who are maybe not used to getting that far to teams like France who've been there and done that and worn the jacket multiple times. They don't maybe it doesn't take the same toll on them with the experience that they have.
I'd say teams like France, Denmark, Sweden, they all plan for a whole tournament. The players always say, we are only thinking about the next game, whatever. But the coaches are just planning to get to the final and how to manage players. There was even for France against Switzerland, Fabregas just didn't play in defence. And that's like a subtle change. It's not just like take Fabregas off. He's still playing, put him in attack, but don't play him in defence. And it doesn't matter. They drew, but it didn't matter. But, it's without throwing off rhythm. So there's like a plan there for Denmark. They knew the games that they could ramp up with, and they knew the players that needed playing time, like Matthias Gissu, who's played every minute. And they're like, you know what, you play every minute. They're planning for their whole tournament. Hungary are just happy to be there. Austria just can't believe they're there.
You may have noticed that Christoph Pulisic wasn't playing today for Hungary. The reason why is because he had to have appendix surgery last night.
Oh my god!
Oh god!
Yeah, so they flew in. He's fine, all good. But so they flew in this third choice keeper Ando, who ended up having a stormer in the second half. Yeah, just like everything happened to this Hungary team. Like. Also with Dominic Mathé out as well, and they're still there fighting away, missing penalties at the end.
All right, Hungary are out, Austria are out. Okay. The semi-finals of the European Championship are coming up. Yeah. The 4 best teams in the world are about to face off. Yeah. So let's talk about those.
Okay. We talk about Denmark, Germany first. How can Germany do this? Guys, what are they going to do, right?
So
Andy Wolf.
Andy Wolf has the biggest game of his life.
Yeah, like you say that, and they're 2 teams that have 2 amazing strengths, and that is attack for Denmark, who have the best attack in the competition so far. They're shooting 70% as a team, and they're scoring almost 34 goals per 50 attacks, which is miles ahead of everyone. But on the other side, Germany have the best defence in the competition by quite a bit, and Andy Wolf. So Germany are only conceding 23 goals per 50 possessions. They're combined... they have 26 steals and 22 blocks, which is double anyone else. And they have the least amount of suspensions, 15 of the teams left in the competition. They have the least amount of suspensions. So I don't think we should underestimate Germany's defense in this as a real challenger to Denmark. The question is their attack going to be any good? Can they string 2 passes together?
What came to my mind there, a point I made earlier in the championship about Iceland against Germany, and that all these Icelandic guys play in Germany and they're just playing a weaker bunch of Bundesliga players. You multiply that by 10 with Denmark. They all know each other very, very well. The attack and defense from both sides. Some of them are teammates. the others they play against each other. I don't know if knowing them so well is a good thing for Germany or for Denmark. Or even if knowing how well Simon Putlik Agitzel can play helps you.
I don't
Or
think
if that just keeps you up at night now for the next 2 nights if you're German.
I suppose you accept it and you try to make the game hell for Denmark.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be the worst game, like the sluggiest game. I hope it is for the sake of it.
It's going to be that maybe our sloggy for 40 minutes and then Denmark just pull away, like, you know.
But both are very, very possible. In this,
But I can't see it being any kind of kind of flowing game of.
Because we have seen teams try to do that with Denmark to keep up with them, and Greece. It's the same thing. Greece, you know, they laid out the challenge. Like Sweden did it to a different extent, where like Sweden knew where they were going to get the solutions in attack, and it wasn't pretty, but they kept getting penalties, kept getting shots from 6 meters. And as Emil Nielsen told us at the time, that was like a hell for a goalkeeper, as he was down to a mere 35% save rate. And so we've seen it over and over again against this Danish team, and it's always a question of how long can they keep up with Denmark. Do Germany want to play that game?
I think they'll be forced into it at some stage. They'll have Andy Wolf in their back, protecting them. There's going to be certain. Denmark are going to have Nielsen, who I think is going to start. But what I say here is, Andy Wolf has had his bad game of the tournament. His one bad game. Or bad half, really, because he actually had a fantastic second half in that game against, was it Hungary?
Yeah. He came back on, yeah.
Emil Nielsen has not had a bad game. And I know he's capable of going through a full tournament without having a bad game, but we've pretty much never seen that before.
He's never played one before. From anyone, from any keeper, you mean? Yeah. But could that be the key to Emil Nielsen getting the MVP title after all? Snatching it under the nose no, I don't think so. Maybe. At the moment, I think if Emil Nielsen has a bad 15 minutes, they'll make the change already. And then it's a question of whether they can have both keepers have a bad game, which is a big ask in a weekend like this. I think if you're going for like can Germany keep up with them, they do have a couple of really good counter-attacking options in terms of the line player, like fast break, and the actual wingers as well. If Kastening is fully fit and Mertens on the other side, they're two really, really good wingers, and I could see them both getting like 6 or 7 goals from the wing in this game. And then they just have to bundle the ball in a few more times, and then they have some kind of a chance.
So is Yuri Knorr going to have a good game? Because he hasn't had a good game in what seems like weeks now. He started off the tournament really well, but he's been really poor for the last couple of games, and Germany have gotten by without it. But for Germany to go anywhere, they need Yuri Knorr,
they do.
Right?
And from one thing that really stood out to me in the game against Sweden for Denmark was just how good Magnus Saugstrup was, and just how bloodthirsty Magnus Saugstrup is. And he's a guy who's going to be waiting at like 10 meters for Yuri Knorr. I think that's going to be a really key battle, because if he can get any space against Saugstrup, then the line player will all of a sudden become very free. But
what
I fancy Saugstrup in that battle.
What do you think it is about Yuri Knorr that's like? Do you know, we always talked about having the best standing shot in the game and all this kind of stuff, and I feel like, is he not taking those shots, or is his head not quite there, or he's not trusting himself because you feel like he's snatching at things, and maybe his shot selection isn't the best at times, but it's kind of hard to put your finger on what exactly he's doing wrong. But he's not definitely dictating play in the backcourt like you've seen him with that amazing season when he was Rhein-Neckar Löwen 2 seasons ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When he was tearing it up in the Bundesliga. But any theories?
And the last championship as well, where he got exhausted because he was
on the 48th minute mark every game.
Exactly. I think it's partially due to a change of style. I think that Giselson has implemented definitely more movement. It's not just Knorr
show
centric handball. Knorr show. It's he's trying to make it work, but that's helped because I think Knorr is probably feeling much fresher than he has at tournaments at this stage. The question is, can Germany and Giselson balance that to kind of go here, 10 minutes, Knorr, you lead the show here.
Just do your thing.
Yeah.
This is yours. And use that in the right way. Use a bit of 7-on-6 in the right way.
Is Giselson the type of coach though to give someone that kind of freedom though? Like, he never really struck me as the kind of guy. He seems like he seems like a very regimented, kind of strict coach who doesn't. It's his system or the highway. Is he the kind of guy to give someone that kind of freedom? I don't know.
I think if he wants to win, they have to throw something new at Denmark because I think one of the reasons, my theory, why he's not getting as much space is because it's similar with Iceland, similar with a lot of teams, is that defenses are not that passive. Defenses are, they figure out how these players move because they have their moves and they're like, okay, now we know how to stop them. And I think they've just prepared themselves. Or like, we cannot be pinned back on our 6-meter line. I haven't seen so many teams at a championship like collectively come off 9 meters or come beyond 9 meters before. So I think maybe that's a little bit to do with it, but
or maybe their backcourt's just really boring, and it's, he suffers in a very boring backcourt. He needs a bit, some 2 firecrackers maybe each side of him for things to work like a little bit.
Yeah, and speaking of firecrackers, I would like to see a lot more from Ustjens, the right back, 21-year-old, one of the World Championship winning under 21s German team, who has looked really nice when he's come on and been an impact player, but he's still been really limited behind Hefner. So he could be a little bit of a wild card that Germany could throw in.
Yeah, and it's not, you can't really lose, and that is their weakest position, right? So you can't really lose there if you throw him in. The best Latvian right back since Stanis Kristapans there in Renars.
What about Denmark? I think they've been fantastic. Sometimes we just don't speak about them because they're just so good. But we saw Putlik have a poor game against Sweden, and Putlik not the ethereal heights that he reached in the previous World Championship when they won, where he was Denmark's best player. There's not a question mark about him, but a team like Germany, who have a really good defense against a struggling back player, yeah, you could see him struggle a little bit. Giesel's going to do Giesel things. And then you have an kind of injured Hansen to deal with. See how much he recovers. Are they enough question marks to think about, Denmark struggling a little bit?
I'm not sure, but I may be thinking like that the bad game all those secondary players had, maybe it was a good thing coming into this game, or maybe it'll be their downfall. But I don't know. I think Simon Pickley maybe hasn't needed to be prime Simon Pickley just yet, and I feel like a lot of the Danish games, maybe bar the Sweden one, they've been in. I mean, they were in control of the Sweden game as well, weren't they? I felt like I didn't feel like they were ever really under.
It was a late flurry.
Yeah. They felt very much in control for the rest of it. So I think it's dangerous to feel like we haven't seen a whole lot from this or this player, because I feel like there's been so many Euros I've been at where we've been having similar conversations, and then when money time comes and they just show up,
there's always somebody from this Danish team. Last year at the World Championship, Lauge was like eased back from his injury, and then he scored 8 goals in the final. Mensah's done it at previous World Championship finals. Like somebody. And they have players to do that. So many players that can do that. Yeah, there's someone who will do that. I think when I saw that, whenever I see them in full flow with Hansen, Putlik, and Giesel, it looks like there's no stopping that. It's like, I think they've given us tasters of that, and I think when the time comes, and that time probably is against France in the final, that they will unleash it properly. And if that doesn't go to plan, then they've got a fantastic Magnus Saugstrup on the line. That doesn't go to plan, They've got a few really handy wingers as well. And if that doesn't go to plan, they'll just save 30 shots. They have enough plans, I think.
I think they will struggle for a period of this game. I think Denmark will struggle for a period. And depending on when that is, will decide the game, I suppose. And whether that period coincides with Wolf being amazing, or you have essentially, I think Germany can make them struggle with their defense for 20 minutes. If Wolf can make them struggle with his goalkeeping ability for another 20 minutes, there's a route for Germany.
Andy Wolf, there's always a chance. No Wolf, no party.
Alex, one more question for you about Germany's defensive statistics. Do you think they're maybe a little bit inflated, seeing the preliminary round group they came from, and then maybe being on the weaker side of the main round, that we could be in for a bit of a, or Germany could be in for a bit of a shock once they come up against Denmark? Do you know, because they came up against North Macedonia and Switzerland in their preliminary round, or their preliminary group. They got beat by France. They almost got beaten by Austria, who, I mean, on paper, they should be walking all over. Do you know what I'm saying? So do you feel like maybe they had their defence, the statistics maybe look a little bit better than they should?
It's not a bad point, but they've only conceded 30 goals once, and that was against France, and twice against Croatia today in the whole competition. And that's good defense. And they played against Switzerland and can only concede 14 in front of 53,000 people, so that helps. That definitely helps. But I think every one of these top teams has had games against weaker teams as well. And if you just look at it as well, the German defense is just, they're so huge. They're just so huge. They're so active.
Sebastian Heymann is just the most ultimate German guy, isn't he? Handball player. Just so stereotypical. So stereotypical. Even how he plays as well. Like, just like, give me the ball, shoot. Like, small head, big neck, you know. But anyway, we're moving on. We move on to the other semi-final, we?
Let's do it. This is a fun one. I have no idea. Where should we start with this?
Right, let me give you some overview of the teams.
Go on.
So France have the fastest pace out of any team in the competition. So they have the most goals scored, but they shoot quickly, they run quickly, they pass quickly, and they're all really, really fast. So they run and gun, and it's worked for them so far. They're shooting at a pretty good efficiency, 66%, and they're the best 9-meter shooting team. Out of the 4 semi-finalists, they've taken the most 9-meter shots, 112, and scored 57% of them, which is a really good mark, well ahead of the other teams, especially Germany, who've shot 37% from 9 meters, which is woeful. But we're not talking about Germany. For Sweden, they have a very good defense, so they're just behind Germany in the per 50 stats with 24. They shoot well, 67% overall, and they're the best fast break. So while France play at the fastest pace, Sweden get on the fast break really well. The team fast break, second wave, and they score 90% of their fast breaks. So 35 from 39 on fast break opportunities. So it's going to be a fast game. Yeah. That's what that tells me.
I think that the crucial thing there for Sweden is the fact that they commit to 6 men going up and down almost all of the time. That they have every single player in the squad who they trust to go in defense as well as attack, and that is something that I think has had a huge impact against Denmark. And another little caveat to this is the fact that this is becoming a semi-final rivalry for the ages, as Nedim Remili said post-match. And I love that Nedim Remili is a guy who is kind of going along with the kind of journalistic chat. Not, sometimes players are like, whatever, and it kind of makes our job seem a bit pointless. But no, he's like, this is a rivalry for the modern ages. We face each other in 3 of the last 4 semi-finals. They're leading 2-1. It's time for us to get one back. And I'm like, Nedim. But Yeah, semi-final of the World Championship last year. France won that without Jim Gottfriedson for Sweden, who had broken his hand. The year before that, the Euro semi-final, Sweden won that with Jim Gottfriedson and Andreas Palika having big games. And then the World Championship 2021, Sweden won that semi-final with Andreas Palika having one of the most outstanding games, I think, in many years, where he really made that flying kung fu save his trademark. So this is a great battle in a way, and I think there's no secrets and no fear for either of those teams against each other. They're both, I think, really up for this. They know what it's about. I think the difference here for France, in my opinion, to those ones, and I don't know how much of an impact it'll be because we've never seen them in a semi-final before, but they have a goalkeeper now. And Samir Belhacem, who hasn't played in a game like this before. And will he, won't he?
I trust him.
Yeah, so despite that, France do have the worst goalkeepers pair out of the 4 semi-finalists. They're only at 29%. Overall, Sweden's pair has 32%. But there's just something, as you said it, Brian, I trust Belhacem. He just has something about him. He has that aura. Maybe it's just the slightly larger goalkeepers that you just trust. You don't trust those skinny boys.
Really,
Tobias Tullin, get out of there.
They're really committing to it to be a professional goalkeeper when they put a weight on them. You know, they're proper handball nerds. Then I think. Now I feel like when I watch him, he's a kind of a guy that rises to an occasion. You know, because I mean, it was huge for him getting the call up, and with the year he's had, how surreal everything's been. I don't think all of a sudden a semi-final is going to be that big of a deal for him. He was an unknown French goalkeeper, unknown to the masses anyway, only a matter over a year ago, and then now he became Kiel's first goalkeeper, selected for France, then playing really regularly for France at the Euro. I think it's a natural step that he'll just be the main man for the semi-final as well, and doesn't strike me as a guy who would let the occasion get to him anyway, but maybe I'll be wrong, but he seems to lap it up and lap it up pretty well. Very different to Vincent Girard, I think, from what I've seen anyway. But I mean, it's a very
just a little. You couldn't resist, Brian. You couldn't resist a little dig to Vincent Girard. The man hasn't played in about a year, and you just give a little stab at the end.
Goalkeeper and defense for France, I think, will decide this one. If they can stop that, Swedish ability to just grind out 6-meter shots, grind out penalties, then they'll have a chance. If they can get the tackles in, if they can give away the free throws instead of the penalties, I think the timing of the Swedish attack when it's going is just it's just so good. Sandell and Lagergren, they're just two guys who have nothing really special about them, but their timing on the run, then combined with their actual shooting ability as they sail through, and that is that is, I think, a little bit underestimated or undervalued by people. The ability of Klar and Gottfriedson to dish out those passes, and the ability of also Karlsbergård to time those runs so well, to just be clean through and it's either penalty or goal every time, is massive. And I really love the wing battle here for the two teams. That's going to be explosive. All the wingers, is great bunch of lads, all 8 of them. And half of them, what are they? Almost 6 of them playing in France as well. A bunch of them are teammates. The two Swedes, Pellas and Carlson, playing for Montpellier with Port. Oh, this guy used to be one of them, not anymore. So
Len.
And Len, yeah. Well, so yeah, they're all Montpellier players.
They're all Montpellier wings.
So that's going to be a nice little thing on the side as well. This just feels like in the end, Hampus Van is just going to score 9 penalties, and he's going to score 4 fast breaks, and he'll be top scorer.
Does this one feel like it has extra time written all over it?
I hope so.
Oh yeah,
That's it.
Yeah,
this
it really
this
does.
is semi-final in Cologne. This is not.
And it's the first semi-final. We all know at a championship,
the first one.
at
Is
a
it
Final
that's
Four,
perfect?
the first semi-final
it's
is
gonna
the
be-
one
it's gonna be a
that
long
goes
night
to
then.
extra
It's gonna be a
time.
long night.
The second
And then-
semi-final is going to
yeah.
throw off at 9:12 or something like that. It's going to be a late one.
Exactly, and then Denmark beat Germany really easily,
40 to
because that's
18.
what always happens in the second.
People are leaving at
But there-
half-time and stuff.
There is one interesting feature of Sweden-France as well. We talked about both teams having kind of second units, or like a lot of these teams having second units, but I think for France and Sweden in particular, they really have second units. Like Sweden have their first line with Gottfriedsen, Karlsberger and Lagergren, and then they have their second line with Klar, Jonsson and Sandell. So they're two lines, and they kind of pick different times when the whole string comes on and comes off. For France, they also they're a bit more fluid, but they give their second line a lot more action on the court. So we're going to have minutes, and this is something that is really like studied in basketball, where you have your first unit and your second unit, and you have to stagger. So you have times when your first unit is playing against the other second unit, and all of this intricacy. But we're going to have times where it's France second unit versus Sweden second unit, and who wins that one? And then France first unit and Sweden first unit, who wins that one? And then there's like all the times in between.
That'll be a great thing to keep an eye on during the game, to see how the score line matches that, if it's a tight game, like where the twos and fro's are. That's a really good point.
Do you think Germany are a bit more like similar to Denmark in that regard, that they have a strong first team and the rest of the team is maybe a little bit unknown? Whereas the other two, Sweden and France, are a lot more similar in that with the units, like you said.
Sweden and France will enjoy going to an extra time thriller.
Yeah.
They'll be like, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be
bench
fresh.
for it, yeah.
Vanna is going to be doing push-ups at 60 minutes, getting himself hyped.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be messy at times. Like, both teams are really good at earning penalties. It could be one of those games where that's all we see for 15 minutes is penalties. Proper handball.
But your gut feeling, my gut feeling is France are probably the favourites going into it, don't know?
Mine too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly. Very slightly.
Very
in my
slightly,
mind.
yeah.
But France.
What about you, Alex?
I put up a couple of polls on Twitter or X as well to see what the general feeling is. And we have two overwhelming favourites,
Okay.
apparently. 82% of people... 84% now of people think that Denmark are going to go through, but 71% of people think that France are going to beat Sweden.
That's bigger than expected.
So it's a lot. It's bigger than expected, I think. And when you look at the tournament, that's probably kind of right, where France have looked way more impressive than Sweden. Sweden have just kind of done the job, but we know that Sweden can do the job, and I do think it's going to be really, really close.
I think this is where the classic kind of fallacy of trying to compare groups before they face each other comes into play, and the excitement of the Cologne group has maybe raised the perceptive level of particularly of France, because they're so much better than the rest. But we really don't know until they come to blows on Friday. But I think it's closer than 71% to 29%, that's for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
And Jim Gottfriedsen needs to get his finger out and play a good game. He just hasn't been good enough.
He could do it. Andreas Palika could do it. It's the classic heroes, the Swedish heroes. Do they have one last or a couple last big performances in them? I think against the old enemy. I'd say so. Two old war horses, Nikola Karabatic and Jim Gottfriedsen, smacking lumps out of each other. Love it.
And for France, their big weakness is that left back position. Like, Nikola Karabatic has been good, but like, it's not guaranteed.
Kind of for both sides, huh?
Yeah, true. Karlsberger and Johansson not.
He's solid. Karlsberg is solid, but he's I wouldn't say like he had a really like. That's why I was so impressed with the Denmark performance. It was a normally good performance. Like he didn't shoot the lights out. He's 4 goals in few assists. And
I still think Barcelona are looking at him going, that's the guy we bought though, no? And then for Barca, I mean, he's different.
But he's the ultimate. Yeah, he's the ultimate. Like, he will do whatever the coach tells him. Like, and that's what I like about the French team as well. There's a few players like that. You know, you look at Valentin Port, you look at Canton Mahé. They're like probably not among the 16 best players in the team, but they have so many tools like that service the team that it makes them worthwhile being in that team. And that is why you have someone like Carles Begord in there, and probably Johansson as well, and not Lucas Nielsen.
And give the keys to Clara.
Anyway. You didn't answer the question, Alex.
That's all I'm saying. What's the question? France or... I think I see France as favourites. When you put it that way, that it's going to take Liam Gottfriedson and Palika to beat France, I just don't have the same... Or Clara, you know. But I just don't have the same faith in those two players as I've had in the past. They look tired right now, the two of them, and they're capable of it. But yeah, France are just fantastic, and hopefully Dicamem continues to show that. Yeah, he's the man, and we see the big matchup in the final.
That'll do it for our semi-final previews. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Brian. And thank you all for listening. We have a short one for our Patreon subscribers after the semi-finals on Friday. So still a really good reason to join and stay with us forever on Patreon for that semi-final review, final preview. And then we'll be back again with another full episode after the finals early next week, where we'll also do our alternative awards, as is tradition. So if you have any nominees for alternative awards or suggestions for the awards, do get in touch with us on the socials or on Patreon. But until then, take care, everyone, and goodbye.